When they're like, oh, you got your doctorate, you must be really smart. I'm like, no, no, I'm educated. There's a big difference. One, debt. Two, don't go to grad school if you can avoid it. But sadly, I chose a path that required it. And there's whole chunks I don't miss. I mean, I missed. Well, whatever. Anyway, so we're actually going to talk appropriately with that little foray into a dissociative fugue. Mental health in the game studio. Who's concerned about mental health in the game studio? Oh, good. Well, and as you should be. Not you in particular, but, you know, just people in general. Because I want to talk to you guys about what Take This does. For those, just quick show of hands, who's heard of us? Okay, more than I thought. That's excellent. For the like 2/3 of you who haven't, we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about what's the difference between mental illness and just normal stress, because I think in America we do a really, really good job of pathologizing feelings, especially if you're a guy. And so we're also going to talk about basically how to care for yourself and others. So we got a lot of ground to cover. I would encourage you all, if you have questions, shoot a hand up, ask me questions. If I think we're taking too long, then I'll just move on. But I love hearing your questions. It shows you're paying attention, so let's do that. So Take This. We started in 2012 tragically after the, colleague of our founders lost his struggle with mental illness and took his own life. And in the wake of Matthew's death, they were asking, what can we do? We were founded by 3 people, 2 of them veteran games journalists, one by the name of Russ Pitts, the other by the name of Susan Arendt. Both of them have collectively been the editors-in-chief of Kotaku, Games Radar Online, The Escapist, no, not Kotaku, The Escapist. One of them was a founder at Polygon. Just they get around. Our third founder was a psychologist in the Massachusetts area by the name of Dr. Mark Klein, who used to write for, I think it was The Escapist, Ask Dr. Mark, after he got addicted to WoW and then weaned himself off. But then he realized how busy he was going to be, so they hired me. What was fun is I was a volunteer for Take This, and I went from red shirt to admiral in one go. It was great. I got a last name and everything. It was awesome. But one of the things we're probably best known for, though it's not the only thing we do by a long shot, is our AFK room. We were the first organization in the world to use staffed mental health spaces at major video game conventions, and we've expanded that to others. We started doing the AFK room at PAX East in 2014, and since then, we have been at every PAX event worldwide. We're at numerous other conventions like E3, MomoCon just did MagFest. That was a trip. Yes, question. What is AFK? I'm so glad you asked, because it is such an old acronym. Most of you were probably not born when it was in use. So AFK, away from keyboard. It was from the AIM days where, you know, you're at BRB, AFK, parents in the room, blah, blah, blah. So the AFK room is the most deliberately boring room at every show. It is quiet. It is confusingly quiet. People come in. 90% of the people just want to recharge at a convention, and they come in, they get confused about how quiet it is, and we watch them kind of go, oh. And then they go over in color. And what's different about what we do and other quiet spaces at other conventions is ours are staffed by mental health clinicians. Not because we're going to therapize you, because we don't do that, but because we want mental health clinicians who know how to talk to you about what's going on without offering therapy, because that's a serious line we don't cross. And so we've got clinicians in there who will keep the vibe of the room mellow and will help you out. Just kind of recharge and get back out onto the floor. 2 years ago at PAX West, Twitch and YouTube Gaming were right across the aisle from each other and got into an who could be louder contest. People came into the AFK room looking like they just did a tour in Da Nang. It was awful. Okay, not history people. Okay, fine. Maybe I need to update that one. Get it away from Nam. AFK room, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Oh yeah, we also do a lot of consultation efforts and outreach, so stuff like this, studios and whatnot. It's an entire wing of our entire wing of our program. Sorry for all of you over here. I'm big. So, yeah, outreach education. Yep, already talked about that. These are all the goals. Let's get right into it. What do you think? Is there such a thing as normal? No. Wrong!
Is that for no or yes?
No, incorrect. There is a such thing as normal. Okay, here's the problem. Normal is a statistical term, all right? Where we run into problems is where we as people so often conflate it with the term acceptable, all right? And normal, all it is what 2/3 of people would do in a given situation, all right? 66%. Now, normal in and of itself has no value. It is neither good nor bad. Most of you are doing advanced learning. My guess is most of you have a slightly higher than normal IQ. Is that bad? Maybe. For the sake of argument, we're going to say no. We're going to say no. It's just a thing. It's just a factor. Where we run into problems, and this is my beef with a lot of American society, is that I mentioned this already. Oh yeah, no, there is such thing as normal. Blah blah blah. I've given this talk so many times. I'm totally getting ahead of the slides. We get into trouble, like I said, when we conflate good and bad, acceptable, not acceptable, with the term normal. And why this is important is that we are going to get into what it's not likely what you think. What is mental health? And mental illness is an abnormal reaction, okay? Usually to abnormal stressors, all right? Now, the interesting thing that a lot of people don't know is that based on CDC estimates, the Centers for Disease Control, 1 out of 4 people in America will be diagnosed with a mental health diagnosis in their lifetime. This is turning into Monty Python. It's like, and they ate Robin's minstrel. Yay. Oh, my people. So 1 in 4 people will be diagnosed with a mental illness in their lifetime. Now, but what that means is it doesn't mean it's necessarily a chronic thing, all right? It just might mean maybe you have a temporary bout of panic disorder. Maybe you have a single solitary 3-week bout of major depressive disorder. Did I see a question?
Comment and question.
Can we keep it to the question?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I have Asperger's. Would that be considered mental illness?
Depends on who you ask. If you ask me as someone with Asperger's who's also in this field, I say yes and no. Because in order to get a diagnosis of Asperger's, like me, you have to have deficiencies in certain areas of functioning that have to impact your life so severely as to cause distress and impairment. Okay? Now, we get into the normal versus abnormal thing. Does it mean it's bad? No. Does it mean it's bad? No. For me, all it means is I have to work twice as hard to be half as organized. What it means is that when I talk to people, I have to make sure they understand I don't take hints. More so than most guys, I don't speak hint. When I go to the Midwest to meet my in-laws, oh, the Midwest is a bad place if you have Asperger's. It is a terrible place if you have Asperger's. They speak in code. And when my in-laws ask me what I want, I'm apparently not supposed to answer directly. It's awful. Like, do you want to do this thing that would be inconvenient to me? Well, sure, you asked. So it causes problems, but whether it qualifies as, mental illness is to a lot of people a really heavily loaded term. To me, it's just a thing. And so that's why I kind of say yes and no. Is it a developmental disability for me? Yeah, quite literally. I don't do, I'm a Vulcan. I can fake emotions and all that, but no, I actually have them. They're just really strong and I have to learn to be human. It's weird. Which I fake pretty well under most circumstances. So good question though. It's a question I get a lot from people. And I usually have to lead with, because I have Asperger's, otherwise they get really offended when I say, well, so anyway. So at any rate, one of the things we always need to bear in mind is that in fact, even if things don't rise to the level of a mental illness, and this is something I want all of you to recognize. A problem is a problem is a problem. All right? Doesn't matter if it has a label or not. If it is a problem for you, it is a problem for you. Just like that one level of Metal Gear Solid 5 that I couldn't get an A on. I spent 2 days on that thing. I'm like, I can't get more than a B. This is awful. Now, in the grand scheme of things, that's not a huge problem. But man, I wanted that A on that level. And it was a challenge. It was frustrating to me. It was causing me some actual stress. Now, for you, as you're going through school, school is stressful, yes? Yeah. Anybody who did not answer yes to, talk to me afterwards because I want what you're having. All right? School is stressful. It has its ebb and its flow, and it comes and goes, and we all have our reactions. I mean, one of the more interesting times for me in grad school was when the nice barista at Starbucks who knew me convinced me I was 3 days off in terms of what day I thought it was. I had to get to class, and I didn't know I did. It took her 5 minutes to convince me it was Thursday when it was Monday. Oops. So in that respect, we all have reactions to stress. There is this thing called the diathesis stress model. You don't have to remember this, just understand that basically imagine everybody's born with a water glass, all right? Some of us have vulnerabilities to certain stressors that make our water glass more or less full. You know, since I've outed myself with Asperger's, I have sensitivity to certain things that makes my glass overflow quicker than other people. And that's fine, I just have to be aware of it, and I have to take care of myself for that. Whereas other people might have sensitivities to, I don't know, what are some classic ones? Abandonment issues. I'm just trying to go totally stereotyped for, old school therapy, sitting on the couch, tell me about your mother type thing. We don't do that, by the way. But everybody, basically, one of the things to know is everybody has their breaking point, all right? I actually trained in a prison, and that's actually where they started calling me Dr. B because nobody wanted to pronounce my last name. And the guys there, it was an amazing thing for them to realize that everybody has their breaking point. It doesn't matter who you are. People can be broken. And that's expected, quite honestly. If you have too much stress, your glass is going to overflow. This is one of the big ones. Sleep changes. I mean, who stops sleeping when they're stressed? Yeah. And that really helps, doesn't it? When you can't sleep and you need to function, and then you can't sleep and you need to function, great times. What's some other? Mood changes. Who gets cranky? Yeah. Changes in appetite. Who forgets to eat? Come on, fess up. Who eats more? Yeah. By the way, to quote somebody probably wise, man cannot exist on Doritos alone. All right? I know this state tried it a couple years ago when Initiative 502 passed, but it doesn't work.
No, wait, why don't you add Mountain Dew?
Oh, God, no. I don't wish that upon you. No, no! La, 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 la. Oh, what are you trying to do? Make me twitch here? But who isolates when they're feeling stressed? Yeah, all right, so there are reactions. And who has trouble concentrating? Yeah. All right, lack of exercise when you're stressed. Who still actually exercises regularly in here? That's what I thought. Okay, for the 5 of you who said you do, good for you. Distraction. Okay, and this is a big one, all right? Because there is evidence that video games as an interactive form of media are actually better for mood repair than passive forms of media like music or movies or whatever. Unless you're a musician and actually playing, that's a little different. But there's a difference between distracting yourself and avoiding stressors. Distraction is, you know what, I can handle this, just not right now. Avoidance is la, 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 I'm not listening, la, 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 I'm not listening. And guess what happens with your stressors? They get worse. So being careful about that. So Just as a reminder, everybody has a breaking point. Everybody. Oh, good. 2 of you still know who Daffy Duck is. I'm known for apparently because of that Vietnam joke earlier, I'm known for outdated references. This is great. So, all right, so maladaptive stress, and it's an interesting thing. I brought this up a moment ago, but pay attention to this. When you're stressed and you have a maladaptive stress response, I mean, exercise is work, by definition, of working out. Who wants to work out if they're already stressed? Few people, but not many. It takes extra effort. Who wants to go eat on a regular schedule when they're already stressed? It's one more thing to remember. Who wants to go to bed at a normal hour when you've got a gajillion things to do? Problem is, all that stuff that you're not doing for yourself leads you more vulnerable to the stress you're already feeling. And then it spirals around and around and around and around. And it's a serious problem because it just gets worse and worse and worse until you can crash and burn. And I'm sure you've all done that. I'm sure everybody's done that in here at least once. I don't know a single person I went to grad school with who did not have at least one panic attack. I think at one point we were almost having a panic watch for people who haven't had one. We were terrible people. I mean, shrinks have a bad sense of humor. I'm just telling you right now, at least some of us. The rest of them I worry about. So, let's talk about, we already mentioned that mental illness is a fairly common thing. 1 out of 4 people are going to be diagnosed in their lifetime. If you don't know somebody who is suffering from a mental illness, yes, you do. They are just not talking about it because there still exists a pretty big stigma around it. And it's often expressed by women and men differently. Yay, socialized gender roles. Woo! No? Yay. I can't tell you how long it takes me to get some guys who come to me just to say, I'm sad. I'm like, no, I'm depressed. No, you're not. You got divorced. You're sad. But mental illness is fairly common. So there's no need for us to feel ashamed about suffering from them. 20% of adults diagnosed with at least one mental illness 2014. Most commonly, anxiety disorders. Who can guess why? No, seriously, who can guess why? I mean, come on. Yes?
I was going to say
Debt. Student loans. We can thank our Aunt Sally for that one.
Excessive work.
Excessive work. Okay, so you guys are going for the causal route. Let's take it a level higher. The reason that anxiety disorders are likely the most common. See, look, words good much. Anxiety disorders are the most common because there's so bloody many of them. Phobias, generalized anxiety disorder, let's see, social anxiety disorder, panic disorder, agoraphobia. There's so freaking many of them. So anxiety disorders become the most common, and mood disorders are not far behind because there's a bunch of mood disorders. But one of the things I want to be clear about, mental illness is not just a reaction to stress, okay? It is abnormal reaction to stress. And once again, normal, abnormal, not good or bad, just a thing, all right? It is not something that's caused directly by a medical effect or something else. Somebody gets beamed in the dome too many times and they've got Dane Bramage. Couldn't believe how long it took me to rehearse that. Wanted to say it right so many times. But if they've got direct brain damage to their frontal lobe and they're exhibiting emotional dysregulation symptoms, that's not a mental illness, that's brain damage. All right? So mental illnesses have to exist independently of a lot of things. I've actually only diagnosed ADHD one time because attention problems are caused by everything. And, other times they had, other stuff going on. So let's go into what's the difference between mental illness and normal stress. Right? Actually, at the end of every major show that Take This goes to, where we run an AFK room and we run a booth and we do panels and we do all of this, the directors like to get together and have our shawarma dinner. It doesn't matter what we're eating, it's our shawarma dinner because this is what we look like. There's no talking. There's often bourbon. And it's our shawarma dinner. What's that? Oh, yeah, Hawkeye? Well, nobody likes Hawkeye. I mean, he's so sad. He's the... Ooh, fight. I've caused controversy. Oh, look, I got a reaction. But let's talk about this. Please don't ever say this. Oh, sweet Jesus, please don't ever say we've all got a little mental illness. Okay? I'm going to tell you why. It sounds compassionate, doesn't it? Really? A lot of people think it does. A lot of people are like, well, you know, that's okay. We all have a lot of mental illness. And I just kind of just slap people. Because they're trying to be kind when they say that. But those of you who said it doesn't sound compassionate, why? It's condescending. What else?
Well, it kind of comes off like you're saying, hey, it's not any mental illnesses that you have aren't really that big a deal because, hey, we all have them.
Yeah, it's dismissive. It's condescending. What?
It's that whole thing of, oh, I know what you're going through, but they don't know what you're going through.
Okay, so it's almost shallow. It's condescending. It's dismissive. Yeah, that's exactly right. And for a lot of people who are suffering things, especially for those suffering from major depressive disorder, if they've already got a really negative self-evaluation, and for a lot of folks suffering from major depressive disorder, they already feel an irrational sense of guilt because they can't fix this for themselves. What's wrong with me? I can't fix it. Other people seem to be happy. And I don't absolutely talk about this from experience. Took a long time to get my ASPE diagnosis. But this can make people feel more alienated. So please, for the love of Jesus, don't say this to people. And you heard me say this. A problem is a problem is a problem. And we as people have this unfortunate tendency to say, well, if other people's problems seem worse, mine must not be a problem. Wrong! So wrong. Just because my car has a flat tire and yours needs a new transmission doesn't mean my car doesn't have a flat tire. I mean, it comes down to that. Yes, question. Very small. Well, okay, here's the thing. I'm going to be real. I'm just going to be real about that. Sometimes people are having irrational reactions to their problems. The example I like to use, so I'm born and raised Seattleite, grew up in West Seattle, spent my time between West Seattle and the Central District before the Central District was what it is now. My dad's place had a crack house out back. It was great. Went to middle school in Rainier Beach. It was back before Rainier Beach started getting gentrified. It was great. And so, you know, back in those days, if I'm rolling in Rainier Beach at 2 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and I see a bunch of guys who I know are Crips hanging out at the local convenience store, and I'm walking on my own, and they hate me already, then should I be a little scared? That's a rational reaction. Now, I live in Bellevue now, and the Whole Foods in downtown Bellevue. Yeah, we got the Lululemon Mafia, but it's a little different because, quite frankly, the yoga moms are not hiding anything under... they're just not. And if I have the same fear reaction when I'm there, like the yoga moms are going to shoot me, is that rational? No. They might hit me with their SUVs. They might passive aggressive me to death, or clip me in the Achilles tendon with their carts, but that's a different matter. So to that, people can have irrationally big reactions to little stressors, and it doesn't mean it's not a problem, but let's say, you know, I get a flat tire on my way to my dissertation and I'm about to miss my dissertation meeting. Is that a big deal, even though it's just a flat tire? Yeah, so it's a situational thing. So we have to assess, but it doesn't mean it's not a problem. Here's something to bear in mind. This I learned in undergrad psych, and it's really important in terms of things. This is how we differentiate mental illness or developmental disabilities, neurological impairments, any of the above, whatever you want to call them, all right? Distress, Dysfunction, deviance, and danger. Now, I could probably ask most of you, who do you know that's deviant? Okay, see, everybody was like, well, I kind of know somebody. What I mean, are they doing something that's different from the norm? And the norm being what 2 out of 3 would do in a given situation. Do 2 out of 3 people go to a technical program like this to get advanced training in development and or technology? No. Oh, see, you're all deviant then. Yay! But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Is that causing you impairment in the long run, or is this for your betterment? Okay, good. So it's possible to be deviant, but for a good reason. Who do you know that engages in dangerous behavior? Extreme athletes? I know people who love, you know, jumping off of 50-foot cliffs while they're snowboarding, and I'm like, oh, no, no, no. My palm got sweaty when I built something too big in Minecraft. No, no. Who's afraid of heights? Ah. But that's a real phobia, by the way, when you realize Marge Simpson's hanging off of something and you're sweating. It's bad. But people can do dangerous things and not have a mental illness. People can be different and not have a mental illness. People, you know, people can do things that are a little distressing to other people. We call them performance artists. And that's not necessarily mental illness. Well, performance art, I don't know. But when you combine them, distress, impairment in a significant fashion for an extended period of time, that's when we should start considering, is this something else going on? Public speaking is the most common fear in America. I've been an actor for 20 years, and I still get nervous before going up in front of a crowd. Does it stop me from doing it? No. But if somebody's fear of speaking in front of people is so significant that they can't leave the house, well, then we're looking at impairment, dysfunction, distress. That's when we start to consider this stuff. That's the big difference. So what does this mean in the studio? Well, a lot, actually. For those who try to talk to people outside of the games industry or the tech industry in general, when you tell them about the stresses that you face, do you just get kind of a what? Yeah, because people don't get it. So the recent IGDA Development Satisfaction Survey just came out about a month ago, even that long. And it's showing that overwork is lessening in the game industry, but it's still a problem. That, oh, what are my statistics on that one? That, 19%, 1 out of 5 people, approximately, work between 45 and 59 hours a week in the games industry, routinely. 37% of those people receive 0 compensation for overtime, and 9% further, so 9% on top of that 19%, work between 59 and 69 hours per week, regularly. Yeah. What's that? They're developers. Yes.
You said that many people are working without overtime pay.
Uh-huh.
I would immediately set that building on fire.
I've heard this before. Well, this is actually why we worked with the IGDA a couple years ago on their Crunch initiative, and we actually produced a white paper that went industry-wide to talk about the effects of crunch, and they ain't good. Now, at first we were being all hippy-dippy shrinks and be like, well, this is what happens to the people. And then I came in with all my cynicism. I was like, yeah, managers don't want to hear that. Let's talk about cost. And it negatively affects both, all right? Both the human capital and there is a significant correlation between studios that use crunch excessively and lowered Metacritic scores. You shorten the hours that people have to work, and you get better work out of them. I've got a whole version of this training that we give to managers about how to promote efficiency over hours worked. Because hours worked is an easy metric to look at and say, well, they're dedicated. The problem is when you hire people who have that value, they're going to expect it from people, and it ain't healthy, okay? When you start overworking, first thing to go is your concentration. Next thing to go is your mood. And if I can't concentrate, I'm not going to produce good work, which is going to make me worry more, which is going to make me not sleep, which is going to make me not concentrate further. And then, does that sound familiar to anybody? Uh-huh. Yeah, thought so. So, but what you should know is that there is an upward trend within the games industry slowly of fixing this problem. All right? You guys are kind of coming in at a good time, I guess. It's being talked about a lot, as does mental health, in a way that it just hasn't before. I honestly, prior to Take This, mental health really wasn't talked about that much in a public way in the games industry. I mean, not to toot our own horn, but I'm going to toot our horn. When I heard that from the VP of developing, the VP at marketing at Bethesda, name drop, that he was like, no, before Take This, there really wasn't anything. And I have to believe him because he's been doing this longer than I have, so. Yeah. Pete's awesome. As somebody who has to fake human, watching the VP of marketing at Bethesda interact with people, it's like a master class, and I'm like, small talk. Oh, that's how you do it. Okay. But since some of you are also going into the film industry as VFX, this is kind of similar in the film industry, except there's unions in the film industry. You get paid for your overtime. So that's one of the major differences. And in fact, the film industry is the industry I often compare the games industry against. There's a lot of overwork in both. One's just been doing it a lot longer, and there's unions. So, oh, that shouldn't still be in there. Okay, there are financial effects. Let's skip that because that's for managers. Yeah, there's a lot of problems with crunch. All right, let's talk about taking care of yourself, okay? Since that's going to be a lot of what you guys are going to be doing. The first thing we're going to be talking about is setting goals. Another one is making environmental and routine changes for yourself. Sleep. That deserves its own section for a reason. And finally, therapy. Now, I'm not saying you should all do therapy just because you're in the games industry, although, but listen, I'm biased. I think therapy is for everybody. So just so you're aware, I have colleagues in this area whose entire practices are built on CEOs who want to come to them just because they need somebody to talk to them straight, all right? Because as CEOs of major corporations, who's going to tell them you're full of crap, dude? Well, yes, I see a hand raised up, but don't do that at your interviews, okay? That does not go over well generally at interviews. But, you know, there are people who, not because they have a mental illness in any way, shape, or form, but because they want a reality check. They want somebody to help them overcome some of their problems. And so that's why I think personally therapy is for everybody. As someone who does it, but I'm biased. So let's talk about setting goals. All right? I want to be healthier. Is that a good goal? No. Why? Exactly. What about this one? I want to do at least a 30-minute workout 3 times a week. Okay, what's the difference? Okay. I heard a couple of things, and all of them were right. It is an actionable item. You can actually follow through on it. It's measurable. It's specific. And that's exactly what you want your goals to be. I want to limit my soda intake to 40 ounces a week or less. Whoever said Mountain Dew. Oh. But that's measurable, okay? If somebody comes to you, well, I want to be healthier, and my question is generally, okay, good, what do you mean? Well, healthier. Okay, we're going to go in circles, aren't we? Well, what does healthy mean to you? Fitter. Crap. So if we can get somebody to set goals that are measurable, that are relatively achievable, and that are just a little bit challenging, because you want a middle ground there. You know, if I say, my goal is I'm going to be at the Olympics in a week, competing. No. Maybe in curling, but just because, you know, it's a great game when the winners have to buy the losers beer. That is a tradition in curling, by the way. Let's see. I want to eat no more than 16 ounces of red meat in a week. Yeah. I was on a health kick when I wrote this. I love these things. Wearables, Fitbits, anything like that that can help you track your data, all right? I'm big on numbers because I can look at it, it can keep me up to date on my goals, and I can see trends over time, because otherwise we as people have these habits called, we have these ways of distorting reality to serve ourselves better. At least most people have that as sort of a defense mechanism. Some of us don't. It's problematic. But other things, who's heard of Super Better? Okay, a couple of you. Super Better is a great online program that teaches you about self-care and resiliency. It's really wonderful at helping you come up with goals and achieving those goals and teaching you why those goals are important. I don't use it so much because it looks like a game built by shrinks, which is problematic because it's not fun. Now, my personal preference, Habitica, formerly known as the Habit RPG. It's a game first and foremost, and it's really, really cool. You have your character, and every time you do one of the three things, something in one of three categories, to-do list, daily routines, and habits, your character gains experience points and gold. You can level up, you can have guilds, you can do social challenges. Take This actually wrote a year's worth of them for a year's worth of the goals for them. See, word's good.
So it's like a clicker game, but instead of just clicking, you actually do like healthy things?
Yeah, you actually set what you want to be doing. If you've got a habit you want to change, you put that in there. Super Better is really similar. It's just more education, less game. Habitica is more game, less education. They're both really valuable, I think. Yes, question?
There's an app that's kind of like that on, I guess, just Play Store, where it's like, if you ever accomplish anything, you put it in and you get like an experience point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of cool just to have like a timeline of all the things that you do. And the more exciting things that you do,
Mm-hmm.
like the more good things you do for yourself, the more experience points you get.
Oh yeah, and I will mention that at least Habitica, I haven't looked at Super Better in a while, but Habitica is free. So yeah, there is that. Yes, question?
Is Lumosity like this?
Lumosity is different. Lumosity is brain training, they claim, although I haven't heard them claiming that in a while because I think the FDA came down on them for that. Because there really, my understanding was there wasn't a lot of evidence to support what they were claiming, that you will have neuroplasticity. Well, neuroplasticity is a thing, but I was always a little perplexed at those commercials.
It helps concentration.
Well, if it helps you, then you know what? You rock that. That's awesome. But they stopped advertising like that. But anyway, so those are some of the things you can do. Another thing, celebrate your improvements, okay? I don't care if it's little, I don't care if it's big. One of the things that I have to teach people all the bloody time is, well, if I didn't cross the goal line, I failed. Okay, no, dude, no, you were trying to run a marathon and you got 20 miles into it. That's freaking awesome. Okay, you've never run a marathon and you made it 20 miles and you started training a month ago? Go you! That's amazing. But for a lot of people, it's a light switch. It's off or it's on. And we can't look at it that way if we want to remain healthy. We need to, actually accomplishing our goals completely is the idea. But if we start belittling ourselves for every mistake, then we're going to crash and burn. And so this is why I love wearables, because you can help assess for an upward trend of improvement. I don't teach, when people set goals for me and they're like, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, cool, that's a great idea. I'm going to do it without fail every day, all the time, immediately. And I'm like, okay. Because that's not realistic. People are going to make mistakes. But the thing to remember is a lapse is not a relapse. Okay? Eating one cookie after I swear I'm going to cut out junk food is not the same as eating a cake every day for a week. They are not the same thing. I had a cookie, but I ate so healthy the rest of the day and I didn't have any more cookies that week. That's pretty good, right? But if we look at this as an either a failure or accomplishment mindset, then they are the same thing. Eating one cookie or 7 cakes, same thing. So we got to unlearn what we have learned. Yeah, lapses are not relapses. Oh yeah, don't minimize your accomplishments. Artists, I hate artists for this matter, all right? If you find yourself saying, yeah, but a lot, you are probably minimizing. Yeah, there's always that guy. No. No, there's always a lot of pushback on this whenever I talk to developers and artists on this because, well, yeah, but I make mistakes. Well, duh. If any of you are musicians, actors, or anything like that, have you ever gone through an entire performance without making a single mistake? No. Right, exactly. The difference between a professional and an amateur is not the fact that the professional doesn't make mistakes, it's the fact that the professional can deal with the mistakes. And so, we're making mistakes as expected, but we don't want to minimize our successes as well. If that was hard for you to do, then good job for you, and you did it, awesome. Celebrate that. Let's talk about making environmental and routine changes because that's a big deal. Do one thing at a time. There's a lot of evidence to support the idea that multitasking is a really, really bad choice. Even those people who are good at multitasking don't perform as well at any of those tasks as if they were concentrating on one thing at a time. Anybody hear of the Pomodoro method? Okay, one person. Awesome. Somebody introduced me to this recently, and it's been awesome for me as someone who the squirrels are strong. The Pomodoro method, the word is Italian for tomato. It was so named after a kitchen timer that he had that was made like a tomato. You set it for 25-minute chunks, and in those 25 minutes, you do one thing, uninterrupted. At the end of that, you take a 5-minute break. And you do that for 4 cycles, then you take a lunch break. So that's 2, or you take a 15-minute break, so that's 2 hours. Then you do it again, then you take a lunch break. But it's been great for me. Other people swear by it. It doesn't work for some. Doesn't works for others. So you do one thing at a time. Focus on that. Make sure your goals include getting some exercise at whatever your fitness level is. You know, for some of you, maybe that means lifting heavy things. For some of you, maybe it means running. For some of you, maybe it means doing Tai Chi. I don't know, but do 15 minutes at least 3 times a week because guess what? Blood does not stop flowing here. It goes up here. It's important for concentration, mood regulation, and the things like that. Also, eat food. You know, real food. If you can't pronounce some of the things in your food, think about avoiding it. No, that's a good one. I understand that the broccoli is hard to pronounce. And it's not a character from an 80s movie, okay? So it's not a surfer. No. But basically, eat the food you know you're supposed to eat. Sleep is important too. What are you talking about? This was me in grad school. Most adults, everybody's needs are a little bit different, but most adults need between 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. I have a friend who's a freaking X-Man and a twin for Luke Cage. It's weird, but there's a reason he's a twin for Luke Cage, because he has some weird genetic anomaly that he only needs 4 hours of sleep a night. He is the strongest, most well-read person I've ever met. He reads books the rest of the time and lifts weights like twice a day. It's gross. I hate Terrence, but I can't because he's awesome. But most adults, unless you're a freaking mutant like my buddy Terrence, need between 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. And guess what? A sizable portion of Americans do not get it. Really focus on sleeping, folks, as best you can. There are health risks associated with the lack of sleep. Aside from concentration issues, cardiovascular incidents are correlated with lack of sleep. It puts stress on your body to not be sleeping. And your work suffers too. I mean, that's what I keep telling managers. If they don't sleep, they don't do good work. You concentrate better. Yes, question.
So when you say sleep and you say 8 hours, do you think just a straight 8 hours or like a 6-hour sleep and then an hour, 2 hours sleep when you come home? Or is it just like a straight 8 hours?
Well, we're going to talk about that because afternoon naps can actually disrupt your sleep cycle. I do not nap because then I don't sleep. So you really do need, most people, now I'm not that kind of doctor, so I'm not going to tell you that everybody needs it because I don't know you. But most people need a good number of uninterrupted hours. It actually declines as you get older, but most people need a good uninterrupted, like 6 to 8 hours. Yeah, as someone who did a double shot of espresso before he came here, no. You get used to caffeine, and when you stop doing it, you actually crash even harder than if you had never taken it before. That's what's called a rebound effect. Sir, sleep hygiene. Set a routine. You want to be careful with food, cigarettes, and alcohol too close to bedtime. You want to be careful with, well, you want to keep your room cooler because our bodies actually drop in temperature when we get tired. So the Sleep Institute recommends between 65 to 67 degrees in your room for most people. Get a good mattress, best one you can afford. As someone who is over a certain age, hip problems and back problems can develop, in addition to, not sleeping so well. Practice a relaxing ritual before bed. All right, make a good routine for yourself. All right, I try and stretch before bed for like 10 minutes and do some mindfulness before bed just to try and shut off my brain, because God, it needs to. What's that? We're going to talk about that. And no naps, at least not in the afternoon. Naps for a lot of people can throw them off. So there's that. Yeah, exercise early in the day. I made a real mistake last week. I was like, I got to get exercise in. So I did a 6K on the elliptical at like 8 p.m. Guess who didn't sleep that night? Was not a good thing. Yes, question.
So if you have naps in the morning, like on the bus on the way to school, is that okay?
If it works for you, it works for you. I actually can't nap at all during the day because I will not sleep. Yes.
Now, my mom works at the health department. Exercising too severely in the early morning is also bad just because your heart is still waking up and thus you can damage your heart.
Whole different conversation. But basically, for the sake of what I'm talking about, don't exercise heavily too close to bed because then you don't sleep particularly well. At least I don't. And this is another thing. If you can't fall asleep, don't hang out in bed. Because really, you want to train your brain that your bed is for two things. Sleep and sex. That's it. What are we, 13? So basically, you want to train your brain. It's your bed's for two things. And if you can't fall asleep in your bed, go to a different room. Use tungsten lighting. Make sure it's on the warm spectrum because blue lighting messes with your sleep. And that's why turn off the screens. All right? Now, a lot of programs these days have nighttime filters, and I don't know of any long-term research studies on those because they're new. But I'm going to guess they help a little bit. But honestly, anything that's got backlighting on it will mess with your sleep. Because our brains start kicking in the melatonin and tell our bodies it's time for sleep when light levels diminish. And so, incidentally, couples who also have screens in bed have a less active marital life. So there's that too. Really, just I try and keep screens out the bedroom. Yes, question.
Computer app called Flux that will dim your computer screen as time goes on. It's 9 p.m. It's a pretty orange screen.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can set a timer for it. So
Yep.
the screen will actually put your computer to sleep.
Ooh, I like that. That's because I know Windows and iOS both have something like that built into them now. So it can be a good thing. Yes, question.
What if you
Oh, back.
What if you can't sleep without at least noise or something?
Well, listen, you know you better than I do, all right? You will always know you better than I do. I'm telling you, I'm an expert on lots of different people, how large generalities function. If, like my friend Terrence, you only need 4 hours of sleep a night to function well, then good, rock on. If you need some noise to fall asleep, my dad's got PTSD. Oh, he definitely needs some noise to fall asleep. He falls asleep listening to NPR because This American Life. I mean, it's a great show, but I need a double shot to listen to it. It's a good show, though. No. But if you need some noise to fall asleep, then, you do you. If that helps you fall asleep and have better sleep, then that's awesome. Yes, question here. Well, I thought I saw your hand up.
Yeah, it was that, but it was more of a statement. Like, my boyfriend keeps his screen on full brightness throughout the night, and he still sleeps like a rock.
Go him. Well, so for me, because again, the squirrels are strong, I actually kind of contradict my own advice. I wiki walk on to fall asleep. Like, I'm like, oh, cool, sharks, boop, arthropods, click, boop. I mean, everything's all dim, so I kind of make an exception for myself on that. It really does help me fall asleep because it helps turn my brain off. But let's go on to, let's see, messes with sleep. Okay, and finally, let's talk a little bit about therapy. All right. But you guys have had some great questions, and I realize we're hitting 2 o'clock, so I'll take questions after this, but let's talk about therapy. All right. It's a good thing, I think. One of my favorite authors in psychology once wrote that therapy is too good to be limited to the sick. All right, over the last 150 years or so, we've gotten pretty decent anyway, at least better than we used to be, about getting people back to baseline when they have diminished capacity, when they are suffering. But in the last 30, 40 years, what we've been looking at are things like positive psychology. A gentleman by the name of Martin Seligman, one of the more influential psychologists in history, really pioneered this movement of what do we do to get people past baseline? What do we do to help them become the best people they can be? And so we've had a real transition in the last 4 decades or so of people looking at strengths, looking at how to improve lives, not just get them back to baseline. And I mentioned my colleagues who that's what they do. They work with CEOs who may not have mental illness. They just need a reality check from somebody objective. And they just come in and it's like, listen, cash only, no records, boom, I was never here, let's talk. Which I'm a little jealous of, because that's awesome. I wouldn't have to do chart notes. So therapy can be just a really, really good thing. It's beneficial for more than just mental illness. We talked about positive psychology, but if you do believe you are suffering from some sort of mental illness and you want to get some education on that, if you want to try and work with that, if you want to try and get yourself back up to baseline, then therapy is a good thing. There's a lot of good options out there, but if you decide to go looking for a therapist, we have resources at takethis.org about how to find a good therapist. I actually liken it to online dating. I'm actually really serious about that. I get sniggers when I say that, but really you go on a website like, let's say, psychologytoday.com or goodtherapy.org or Theravive or any number of other ones, and you find like 5 or 6 profiles that look good to you. Call them. Talk to them for like 10 minutes. See who you click with the best, because 30% of the change that occurs in a therapeutic context has to do with the relationship. It's the single greatest controllable factor. So basically, whoever you click with the best is probably going to be the best fit for you. Probably going to get the best results out of. As much as some therapists hate to hear this, technique counts for only half of that. The relationship is most important. So there's actually a lot more to go over. You guys had some good questions, but we're gonna reaching out to for the sake of time. One thing I do want to leave you with before we go to questions. When you reach out to people, okay, look for changes in behavior. That's that whole normal, abnormal thing again. When you see somebody who is displaying behavior that you consider out of the realm of the expected, it doesn't necessarily mean they're in distress, but it is a clue. If you see somebody who's constantly, their eyes are darting as they're trying to talk to you, that doesn't necessarily mean they're in distress, but it's a good clue. You can at least ask about it. How you doing? One of the stories I like to recount is PAX West 2016. I was coming out of the AFK room, and that is our busiest AFK room. This was 8 o'clock at night, and I see somebody, this is after the showroom floor has closed, and they're alone against a wall looking like this. The shrinky sense was tingling, and I thought, hey, I should go over to this person and ask what's going on. because that looks like that was not normal. I went over to the guy and was like, hey man, you okay? He just looked up at me. Oh yeah, I'm great. Okay. I just came over here because I saw you like crouching with your head in your hands, and he was like, oh yeah, you thought I was in bad shape, didn't you? I was like, yes, I did. And he's like, well, thanks for checking on me, man. Cool. I was just trying to get a break, and this seemed like a quiet spot. I'm like, okay, rock on. Have a good one. And I at least go over and check. So it's okay to go over and check, but when somebody is talking to you about their distress, if you find they are in distress, don't problem solve, at least not right away. Okay? Similarly to saying we all have a little mental illness, jumping immediately into problem solving is minimizing. It's dismissive. It subtly says, I understand what you're going through without actually taking the time to understand what they're going through. And I have the answers. You pregnant mothers say this all the time. Everybody has the best advice for them. So take the time to talk to them. The best way to do that, I can teach you, can be summarized 4 letters. SCEP. Summarize what they're trying to say, check your understanding of it, and let them correct you. Find something within that to empathize with. And then you proceed to what you have to say without negating what they said. This is therapy 101. So what I hear you saying is that, okay, so you just came over here and you just needed a quiet place? Yeah? Yeah, no, I'm good. Well, that makes sense. Cool, man. All right. I just did all those in one go. Checked with them after I summarized what they were trying to say, and that works typically pretty well, not only when you're trying to reach out to somebody, but also in conflict situations, because you don't just override them. This is actually part of when I teach conflict resolution in studio spaces. Summarize what they're trying to say, don't argue with them, find something to empathize with, because there's always something to empathize with, even if it's how they came to their conclusions. And then proceed with what you have to say. So yeah. Any questions on all this? We've got a couple minutes over here.
Let's give Dr. B a hand, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.